Also, just for your information, since our last meeting, I got a new camera, which gives me a better picture of myself because people were complaining I was kind of blurry. The other issue apparently was the frequency of the light from the other uh, lamp that's over the computer. And so I bought a new lamp and tried, and that got rid of the blurriness of my face. So it's amazing what a different light frequency can do to a computer. Anyway, okay. Um, First of all, AI is monitoring this call, and it will provide each of you with a summary of today's discussion for whatever it's worth. And the other item is our next meeting, which is April 4, will be our 100th. So I'd really like if you can go through the Zoom topics list, and or if you have any other topic that you think would be really worthwhile having for our 100th, please get it to me so that we can make the 100th a super Zoom discussion. And we don't have to worry about the Captain Jet. That Captain Jet was a kiddie show back in the 50s. And this is worthless history for Los Angeles. And his salute was Zoom. Today this means something else. And apparently the mic was on during an intermission and he didn't know it, and he said some unfriendly things about kids, and somehow his show was canceled the same day. So you got to be worried about microphones. Anyway, back to reality. First topic is, how do we get more black belts to open their own dojo? And is that your goal as a sensei? Demographics is a factor. We don't want them too close to our dojo because that can be competition. Unless our dojo is way over capacity. And I guess it comes down to location, location, location. So does anyone want to grab onto this or say anything?
I would love to grab onto that one, George.
Okay,
Ken.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think one of the things to do would be to prepare a list of steps of how to start your own dojo and some of the strategies. Then, of course, putting forward some of the strategies. I would use my example here in Abbotsford. I went to local community partners. I offered programming. I basically sold these potential community partners on the benefits of our programming. Partners provided practice space, clients, and insurance. There was no cost. So from the no cost, it was like go and take your programming in, run a good programming, have a successful outcome, get some good word of mouth press. The other thing is then our local recreation center said, you know what, we're looking for a program for seniors. So even if it's something you might think it's not particularly your forte or your area of practice, be open to being creative about what are the health benefits of practicing a martial arts. If we're doing something for seniors 55 plus, what would that look like? Then we ended up getting contracts with Parks and Recreation to offer programming for 55 plus. So we did a martial arts based program. So to start your own dojo, look for the opportunities. Don't, I would say be bold and be broad in your thinking. Don't just say, I have this curriculum and this is what I want to do. be creative, use some jujitsu strategy and strategizing and say, how do I bring this to fruition? So in our example, we found community partners who provided resources. We ended up finding some an area where there was a demand for specific programming, and we found contracts. And currently now we're planning on opening our own dojo, our own space, 1,300 square feet of space. So that we moved through a process. 2 years in the making, and we're acquiring a dojo space. So that's what we did.
Okay. Yeah, it is going through or going through community agencies is probably, if you're not looking at it as a source of income or major source of income, that's probably the safest and easiest route to go. And although you may face challenges, when I went to the city up here, they said, you need to have insurance. And they initially said, we already have a jiu-jitsu program. And fortunately, I had looked at their program list. And I said, and you also have 3 different karate programs. So why can't you have 2 jiu-jitsu programs? So sometimes, you got to do, I think what you're saying is you've got to do your research, particularly with a community agency. And that agency itself is a real positive support factor for you getting students. And the fact that you may not be doing it for a living is also a positive factor, because you can be a little more inclined towards, I say, teaching what you want rather than trying to have enough students to pay the bill.
Yes, but I think the other thing as well, George, is while you're going through these steps, as I had outlined, you're also building your brand, and you're building a client base. You're building your community of practice, right? So
Right.
you're building your brand. You're building up your membership. Gives you an opportunity to build membership. Like, I currently have a membership of practitioners now that will follow us into the dojo, right? And in the good weather, which is coming now with the spring equinox, they will follow us into the park. So you build up a following, right? So how do you get out? So for me, it's like go to, as you would call them, agencies. Go to agencies and go to locations, offer some programs, offer some programming, which gets your product out into the marketplace. If you're looking at creating a living and generating an income, right? Go out and network. It's networking.
Yeah.
Look for opportunities. And this is promotional work. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments on this part of this, or
I think the question was, how do you get your black belts to open up dojos, right?
right?
So my question would be is, what's the motivation? What's the end goal of wanting to do that?
Okay, the good question. The end goal would be to have more dojos, as Ken said, more dojos of your quote unquote own brand. But the contradiction to that is you don't want them so close that they would draw away students from your program. And that's that's the other side of the issue. So if you're going public agencies, unless you've got people just lining up at the door to take your classes, you're glad to see your black belts go out and start their own dojo, because that is a true learning experience for them, that you've had, and makes you who you are. And you want them to have that experience, because then they become better sensei and more appreciative, hopefully more appreciative of the effort that you put out to get them there. But the other side of the coin is you don't want them so close that they're taking students away from your dojo. So
Sensei, another possibility is complementary dojos.
yes,
Person who assists me, Paul Haynes, has a dojo just blocks away from ours. He comes and guest senseis at our dojo about once a month. I go and guest sensei at his dojo periodically. And so we actually end up supporting each other. My students are excited to have another sensei and literally applaud when he comes in. And it warms my heart because it makes me happy that we team teach. So sometimes having another dojo close by can be cooperative instead of competitive.
okay.
I'd say I have I'll answer the question as Chris had presented it because I think he had put it in a good format to respond, but then I'll express some of my challenges with it. To answer how Chris had presented the question, I would say it's because I would want to see the legacy of our system continue. That's why you want your black belts to to follow behind you and open up their own facility. That's what I would want. However, for me, I struggle with, look, everybody has, new students that come in and they're over enthused and excited and want to be a part of the program. And those new students come and go. Some you keep and some you lose. But when they get to the intermediate level and then to the black belt level, the part that I have a challenge with is one, being able to identify that one unique individual that can hold the legacy, continue the legacy moving forward. And it's just it's almost demoralizing when they either achieve a down rank and you lose them, or just before and you lose them. And so that's my struggles in finding out how to move forward with how Chris had presented the question. But I think it would be legacy for me for the system and the style and art moving forward. But I struggle with the back end of, in today's time and day and age, I'm not concerned about the challenges. I don't care if they want to open up right next door to me. I would support that. But it's just being able to find that one unique individual that eventually makes it to the level that you could promote them into thinking that they would move forward with the system, and then you lose them.
I think you brought up a really important topic, which I'm going to add to our list now, which is losing a student either once they get to Shodan or just before. And because, and I can speak for all of us, when a person to have a student get to that point is an incredible amount of work on your part. And you've got to know this person and you've put maybe some of your hopes and dreams in them, and then to see them depart for whatever reason, it is a loss. Because we're not talking about we're talking about a relationship that goes, by that time, probably stretches over years. And it is a loss. And I've lost some of my black belts that way, and that it really it does hurt, regardless of their reason, even if their reason is legitimate. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But that's a subjective decision on my part. But it's a good topic, and I think we'll delve into it more later. But I wrote it down. Thank you, Darren.
Yes.
So, Sensei, if I can jump back in, with the original question makes a difference because we're talking about expansion now, so
Yes.
there's a couple of different reasons to want to expand. One is from a business aspect, because that's what businesses do. If you're not expanding, you're dying. I mean, if you're in business for anything, the motivation should always be to expand. So sometimes that's in the different markets, sometimes that's in the different parts of town, sometimes that's in offering different products and services, or all the above. So that the business aspect is pretty clear, and the motivation is clear to maximize your profit by reaching the most amount of people. The other aspect, I can tell you, like for me, it would be strictly space issues. So once you maximize the use of your space, now you're turning people away or you're overcrowding. So that's a motivation now to open another location. And you know, like Darren said, I wouldn't care if it's right next door or if it's across town. You know, because it's an extension of your main dojo. So black belts obviously would be good to open a place up. The challenge is, aside from what's been stated so far, it's difficult running any type of business. You know, and a dojo is a type of business. So just because somebody is good at martial arts doesn't make them a good business person. So part of the, you know, when I take on people in our kind of quote unquote leadership group, I also try to teach them the business aspect of things, general business, and then dojo type of business, you know, the different kinds of things involved in running it. If you look at the old gym owners, really before 24-hour fitness came about, all the gym owners were basically either bodybuilders or people that like to work out, and they just went and opened the gym. Nobody cared about, you have air conditioning, you know, if it's sweaty or smelly or whatever. You just kind of expected that, just like the old dojos. And then 24-hour fitness came about, and it was a whole different experience, you know, a gym experience. So a lot of those old places are gone, and it's hard to start that way now, and it's hard to sustain that, because unless you're running it like a business, it's really hard to just have an interest in something and hope to do a good job. So just because you develop a good black belt doesn't mean that you've also developed a good business person who's able to run things. And that's why I would kind of treat it as like a franchise, you know, type of a situation where you offer to support and maybe even run some aspects of the business, you know, and the brand, and then they can focus more on teaching. They would have to do some aspects of the business, but they can focus on teaching. If you don't expand that way, then it's super difficult, because then if the it's difficult to get a person that can do both, you know, that can run things, you know, sustainably, and also be a good teacher, develop staff, you know, and all these things. You know, churches expand the same way, you know, so I've been part of different churches over time, and it's the kind of the same model. You know, you identify a new location, and then you support that, you know, for a while, 6 months, a year, you know, sometimes longer, and you can support that financially, resources, instructor exchanges, you know, things like that. So for me, I think about expansion sometimes when we start getting too full. Um, but otherwise, there's really no need. You know, legacy and these kinds of things are okay. I care, but I don't really care at the same time. You know, to me, it's about the lives we touch, and if I improve them, um, you know, I mean, how many people really know the difference between different kinds of martial arts versus the different lineages within those martial arts? You know, they care only when they care. Nobody cares really up front. You know, in the old days, maybe it made a little bit more of a difference, but nowadays it's, you know, it's about a safe, clean place, you know, with, you know, qualified, you know, people that can teach good, you know, a well-run place. And you know, what you're teaching is almost, to them, at least in the beginning, kind of secondary, unless you have people that are looking specifically for the sports aspect, as they want to compete, and then there's specific, quote unquote arts that, lend themselves to that. But most people, at least from my experience and from my travels, they're looking for something not that specific. So it's why we want to expand and then how we're going to expand. And we have to take into consideration the business aspect of running a dojo. Even if you're not focused on making a profit, you still, there's still insurance, tax licenses, and a million other things you have to deal with, on an ongoing basis, at least in California. I don't know about the other states.
I
And
think
it's
it all
more,
still applies.
yeah, I mean, the type of stuff they come up with is really, it's very creative. Let's put it that way.
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
Yeah, I think what we're doing here, since many of us operate out community agencies that for lack of a better phrase, take care of some of these business burdens to some extent. But I think it ultimately comes down to, at least I've found experience, it ultimately comes down to word of mouth advertising. And so, you've got to have an instructor who somehow shows a real interest in wanting students to succeed. And the positive environment is extremely important as well. You've got to have a nice, clean facility, and the dojo behind you, Chris, is absolutely beautiful. I'd love to have it. Maybe someday in another life, or in the great tatami up in the sky, maybe that's what we're looking at.
yeah, it's the community. Most people love the community,
Yeah.
and even we have quite a few black belts. We have a pretty good retention rate with the black belts. Nobody really wants to leave because they like the community. Now, in the old days, the old instructors would say, go and do this, go and open up a place. And you kind of have your marching orders, and sometimes it's like, go to a different country and do it, but it doesn't work that way anymore, but that's okay. Building that community, building that sense of family, and doing something healthy together, something you enjoy. As long as the space accommodates that, then you do. And if it's growing, then you can always move into a bigger space. And if that's not feasible, then you open up another location. But as far as propagating the art or whatever, in the big scheme of things, I think, at least for me, that's really a lot less important. But you guys know that about me. I don't really care what it's called or, what it is. I think the lineage and history are important, but, what we're calling it and, um, how we're doing it is secondary to me. We have to constantly keep adapting, not changing the core, obviously, science and fundamentals and things, but, things around us change. And for us to stay relevant, whether it's one locations or, 50 locations, it's the relevance is how it helps people, and how they benefit from it. I still see, some websites and people it's all about the head instructor and the million awards they have and the competitions they've won. Well, that's great, but that's one aspect. But can you replicate that in me or my kid? It's this type of thing, and very few people that are good at a trade or an art are also good business people. And the important thing is to recognize that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if you recognize it and acknowledge it, maybe you partner with somebody that compensates for the other part of it. Of course, that can bring its own challenges, but hey, no risk, no reward. So,
All right.
yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to mention anything on this topic before we move on? Okay. Next topic is student handbook or guide or whatever else you want to call it. I know I have one which essentially was developed because I had to start a program when I was offering an elective program that the junior high was teaching at, and that I had to develop the curriculum and all that other fun stuff that we all love doing. And I know Dave he puts me to shame in terms of the material he has for his students.
True, but thanks.
Very, very, very thorough, and he has, a lot of visual assists that just to me make life easier for the student. So I guess my question is, how many, if you're sensitive, do you have a student guide, some sort of student guide, or something that students can refer to if they need some information and they're not in class, and you're not going to spend the entire class reciting the obligations of the students or what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing or how to get a promotion or all this other neat stuff. It's all how do you say, I don't really mean to say clerical junk, but does anyone else have any sort of student guide or reference they use for their students, or is it?
We do. I've had one for years, but funny enough, I'm in the process of getting rid of it, actually. Well, changing it. This isn't this isn't a unique thing to martial arts. It's really all over. People don't read anymore. So it's kind of the Disneyland experience. Disneyland has rules too for the visitors, but how many people, read it or know about it? They go in expecting everything else will be directed to them and taken care of, and they can just have the experience. It's the same thing here. I've had very, very few people over the years even look at it and read it, and we do a whole orientation for new people that start. But they don't read it, they don't reference it. So actually, because I work in the area of AI, also, I'm in the process of actually taking that and making a little like a video, with the handbook, because they will watch short video clips. So you can actually animate the stuff and do a short video. So that will be part of in the next hopefully couple of months. I should have time to finish it up. But that's going to be the student handbook. It's going to be a little cartoon video thing.
I'd like to see it because I'm
sure.
I mean once I came out with the handbook, this is a bunch of stuff, and so the handbook is there. Every student gets one. I do not spend a lot of time on it or with it, but sometimes students will ask questions, and if they're in class, I'm not going to say, "Well, look in the student handbook." To me, that's a cop out. I'll tell them.
I'll tell you. Even, I'm sorry, but even with the curriculum, forget the handbook. Okay,
Yeah.
Even the curriculum, we have a student app that we use that everybody has. There's videos on there. There's a curriculum, everything. And then for a while, I also printed it, giant poster sized, and it's in the dojo. And still, people, what do I need for my next rank? Turn around. Look. So they will literally walk by it every day.
Teacher, I agree with you 10,000%. You can hit the back of the head with it, and it won't make any difference.
Right.
So I'm like, this is the TikTok, YouTube culture. So that's okay. Like I said, to me, it's about adapting. I'm not fixated on how we deliver this stuff, as long as we deliver this stuff. So if that's their attention span and that's how they'll absorb things, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I get to be really a sticker on is because I've seen it happen where I will tell new senseis, or if I visit the dojo, I said, Well, number one, I'm a big believer in safety rules being posted. But one of the things I learned early on as a teacher is that the more rules you have, the more difficult it, and the more time you spend on trying to enforce them. So I try to keep my rules to 10 or less, even when I was in classroom. Classroom, I simply said, I'm not going to, here it is. We respect each other. That's it. Do I need to explain what respect is? And
Probably.
surprisingly not, because most people, by the time they're junior high, they've got a pretty good idea of what, how they want to be respected. And I said, it's a mutual thing. And I said, that's the way I prefer to run my class. And yes, we may have difficulties, but we'll work our way through them. But the critical reason I say the importance of safety rules is I've seen on a couple of occasions where an insurance company will come down on the sensei in the dojo and say, where are your safety rules? They're not posted. And yes, students will walk by them 99% of the time and never read them because you kind of verbalized, or other students have verbalized what the safety rules are. You don't do this in here, or you do this, or by the culture of the dojo, you bow before you get on the mat. And some students initially think it's just a formality. And my reasoning is, yes, it's a formality, but it also makes you stop and see what's going on the mat so you don't walk in between two people that are working out. So, there are a lot of, how do you say, enculturation and rules are the basically, I kind of put them in the same category, but I've seen dojo and sensei get nailed because they don't have them posted. And to me, it's such a simple thing. It's such a, simple CYA. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris, just kind of on the side, yes, students do ignore most of the time, but that's because they've learned from the culture of the dojo how to behave and what's acceptable. And that's usually true in any society. It's amazing what you don't have to tell you don't have to tell your kids or your students what they can or cannot do. They figure it out.
So George, another interesting point here, I guess, is what content do we suggest would be in your handbook? Because that
Yeah.
might vary. So
Yes.
for me, I would say like your curriculum, maybe that's separate, but in your handbook, your curriculum,
Right.
some general safety rules.
Right.
I would say some rules on etiquette, which include, let's say, some rules on hygiene regarding fingernails and cleanliness, etc. But what else do we think would be the minimum? What would a good club handbook consist of minimally? What must go into that?
I would probably say to some simplified extent the philosophy of the art.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just things in terms of reference. So if they're interested, they can go find it.
Yeah.
It's once you get beyond the core stuff with safety rules and personal cleanliness and respect and and the curriculum and maybe the belt tests. It's mainly I see the handbook as mainly a reference for the students. If they're interested, they'll go look for it. I mean, and again, that idea was when I was a teacher. Teachers in the classroom hand out tons of paper, and I got tired of it. So one day, one of my 8th grade kids says, "Why do you put all this stuff together in a handbook and give it to us at the beginning of the year?" Because I did a lot of more one-on-one teaching than I did the whole class, and this would allow them to kind of like move at their own speed. And so that's why the student handbook and the black belt handbook, which is one of my goals for probably next year at this point, is to update the student handbook, because I've got some stuff in there that is way too detailed and I consider it junk, and I don't think anybody even looks at it because it's so so how do you evaluate all the things you look at when you evaluate a black belt for promotion. And I don't even know if I go through all those steps. There is a reality check, and so, some of it is kind of, I want to get rid of the superfluous stuff, which ultimately may cut the size of the black belt handbook maybe down by a third or a half, but that's okay. Because as I think Chris said, or Ken said, you do periodically have to update this stuff. No handbook is etched in stone.
Sensei, when I was a student, I used the Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu student handbook as orientation. I could look ahead and see where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Plan accordingly, and we use it as a student handbook.
Mm-hmm.
We also have, separate from that, a dojo handbook that I wrote that's simply designed to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And I'll pull it out from time to time, and at the beginning of class to show a certain page and address a certain issue. And our dojo handbook is the only thing I've written that's got a color cover. It's 73 pages long. It's got fun information in there, as well as practical information and orientation. And so those two kind of work hand in hand. The other thing that I find helpful as far as orienting, and Kadamian's very correct, we live in a TikTok, YouTube culture. I'm glad you mentioned that. And that is, if you don't have a website, create one. Ours is kataguide.yolasite.com. It's simple, kataguide.yolasite.com. They can go to that immediately, and they can use that in a way that might be more appealing to them than reading the written pages. And they can be in line at a movie theater. They can be out at the mall with their friends. And if they got some downtime, they can pop onto that site and look up any number of topics that they could be working on or reflecting on or learning from in a moment, spontaneously, without having to carry anything with them other than that which they always have with them, their phone.
Yep. Hey, Dave, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You said that when you started, you referred to which handbook, someone's resource?
The Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu student handbook that George has in his dojo.
Got it.
Uses in his dojo. And it's for whatever changes Sensei Kirby's heading toward with this discussion he's mentioned, especially early on. It's an orientation process. Here's what I need to do to get rid of this dreaded white belt and at least be wearing a yellow belt. And these are the techniques I'm going to work on. These are the kata and the waza I need to know to move up in rank. And I found it inspirational to look ahead beyond, 2, 3, 4 belts beyond where I was working, just to know where I was headed. And I could look ahead to the degree I was interested in finding out what's 2 and 3 belts ahead. It was motivational for me to have that. I've observed similar situations with students. They'll ask questions about future belts based on what they see in the handbook, the student handbook, and also our dojo handbook.
Right. If one thing while you were talking, Dave, one of the niceties for the I'm sure many of you have this is split screen on your computer. And so I went to my website, and if you go to alternate instructional guides, Dave Clark's quick cross-reference study guide, is a link there for it, listed alphabetically by belt rank, core movement introduction, the black belt guide to all techniques in Budoshin jiu-jitsu forms. And I've seen some of Dave's color renditions as well. And so if you can't pull this information off my website, get in touch with Dave, or you can go to, I've got your website, Dave, is www.yolasite, that's spelled YOLISITE.com. Is that still active?
Right. It's interesting, as that evolved, if you leave off the www, you'll get there quicker and with a lot less frustration. Just kataguide.yolasite.com. So it's KATA GUIDE.YOLASITE.com. Kataguide.yolasite.com. And that'll get you there. I'd forgotten about the colorization of the belt levels. Paul Haynes did that for me one day, surprised me with it. He has his digital skills far surpass my own, and it was a great gift that he just took it upon himself to do that. So I give Paul Haynes full credit for that.
If any of you have, I mean, I look at again, I know my website is kind of sometimes goes in all sorts of directions to some people. But if you have an instructional guide you don't mind, quote unquote, putting out there, I will list a link to it. Because I see, I don't want to say I know from experience, like classroom teacher teaching jiu-jitsu, there's no one way to teach something. And I have gotten so many good ideas from my black belts, from my students in the classroom. I do not consider myself the sole source of wisdom. So if you have something you'd like to get out there, and it's probably good PR for your dojo and what you teach anyway, I will add it on to the alternate instructional guides, because how do you say, the more resources I think that you can make available to potential students, the more it helps the art, and the more it shows that you're open-minded and about things. So, again, that's just an invitation to you. If you want to do it, if you don't, that's okay. I won't hold it against you. Okay. Okay. Let's see, where are we here? Communicating with students. It's kids versus adults, and that can be broken down into whole class versus individuals. And your sense of humor, and avoiding condescending language. Sense of humor is, I'm going to pick up on the first thing. Sense of humor is something unique. It's amazing. I've seen, I from experience, and I know some of you well enough that you have you can be totally serious on the mat. And even while you're serious, depending upon your facial expressions or how you say something, there's a subtle sense of humor in there. And if your students can pick that up, they tend to actually remember what you're saying better, because having a sense of humor somehow makes you a little more humane, as long as it's not sarcastic humor. So do we, I mean, I know we have kids and we have adults. How do you or do you communicate to them differently, kids versus adults, or whole class versus individuals, or is this so obvious we don't need to mention it? Or
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm very proud of my eldest son, or all three sons, but Christopher's my eldest son, and I always spoke to him as a little person, just a person to person. I didn't do kitty goo goo talk, and I didn't do those things. I just talked to Christopher. And I think for me, that's I like to speak to everybody in the same fashion. I just like to be consistent. I think a sense of humor is great. I use humor. I think consistency in our own behaviors is very stable and very secure. And I think we should speak to all people the same way. And to come back to your point about culture, because the concept of culture came up a couple of times in today's conversation. What type of culture do we create in the dojo? But I think it's very important what we model is very important. Being consistent in how we talk to every person, even maybe a person that's a little more challenging versus a person that's very inspiring. And so I just like to be consistent in my messaging with whoever I'm speaking with and in whatever circumstance. And that helps and to help create the culture that I want. So we have the cultivate that desired culture. That's my thought on that part.
Okay.
I agree with you, Ken. My experience teaching all age levels is that adults are just big kids and kids are just little adults. It's amazing how many adult qualities you find in children and how many childish qualities, or I should say childlike qualities.
Yes,
Big
yes,
difference
yeah.
between childlike and childish.
Yeah.
Childlike qualities that adults have and display and bring out.
Yeah.
Overall, the beauty of using humor when you teach is to not just create a relaxed atmosphere. It opens up learning channels. Learning is far more effective, far more prevalent in a humorous setting, as long as it doesn't go overboard.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to reel ourselves in.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, Dave. In my 55 plus age group, I will regularly make jokes. I get people laughing. And when people are laughing, I remind them how we learn in a safe learning environment. We learn when we feel good. We learn when we light up those right channels, as you say, when we get the brain primed. But yeah, it's a great point about play. Adults, keep in mind when we come together, we often use the term, say in the judo community, they use the term the player or two players. When two players come together, we are at play, right? We're having fun. This is something we love to do. It's our play. And I think maintaining a safe and playful environment is good. Just playful, learn through play, learn through doing. So it's a very good
It's
point.
such a serious topic that we teach, and it is to be taken seriously. And yet, the irony is that we enjoy it so much that it feels like play.
Yes.
I know a 2 hour a class in a dojo goes by in 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and my students will say the same thing. It's like, wow, it's already over.
Yeah.
You lose track of time because it's so engaging. It's so all encompassing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when we're having have a good time. You got to have a good time. And George had mentioned that at the outset of this conversation, like how do we get people to open more dojos? The other concept came up about culture and how do we speak with people. But for me, I've just lost my train of thought, sadly. But we were talking about play and experience, and I lost my train of thought, so that one's gone on me this morning. But I'll leave it there. When that thought comes back to me, I want to get onto it, but it has to do along the area of play, and I'll come back to that.
Ken, thank you for doing that, because when each one of us loses their train of thought, now we feel better. We have good company.
We know we are all in good company. I'm a little dehydrated today. I'm trying to stay hydrated, but and that's the other thing. Keep in mind, on any given day, we're not 100%. Some people in the dojo, and that's a safe culture in the dojo as well, is to know, like, come in and bring your best every day. It's not going to be 100% every day, but bring what you can. Thanks, Dave.
I think what you're saying is here's really the culture of the dojo determines how relaxed your students are, which in turn the more relaxed they are, the more receptive they are to learning and gaining from the experience.
Yes.
That's that's the key of a good teacher in any environment.
Yeah.
If your students are uptight, uh, uh, they're not going to learn anything. I've observed teachers in the classroom that there are a couple that have absolutely no business being in the classroom. There were some that the kids just absolutely worshiped them because the kids were treated with respect and courtesy, and they were treated fairly. Um, it's and it really all comes down to, as you said, Ken and Dave, it comes down to how the culture you're trying to establish, and your personality. Um, and like I said, I've known a lot of, I'll just say it, Oriental sensei who come across as very serious, but underneath all of it, there's a real sense of caring, a real sense of I want you to succeed, and they also have a very good sense of subtle humor, which occasionally comes out. And unless you're in tune with them, you don't get it.
Very, George, that's a great point. Gentlemen, if I may, David, where I was going was participant experience, right? Like the client experience, the user experience. For us, the participant experience. Um, we have a certain culture, right? I really like to emphasize the martial art culture of traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, say, versus competitive judo competition sport today, or competition BJJ. I like to foster the martial art aspect of personal discovery, personal development through the martial arts platform. So the participant experience is very important. We can't change our culture, we can't change our curriculum to satisfy every individual. But if that participant is coming in to the martial arts community, I like to see that they have a very good martial arts experience.
Mhm. It's
Sometimes
about,
that's
yeah,
sometimes that's challenging because some of them are like, yeah, I'm already a senior. I'm already a senior rank on YouTube in my YouTube group, but they haven't even come into a dojo and practice with live bodies. But when a participant comes in, I want them to have a good participant experience. And again, within reason, as George said earlier, respectful, mutually respectful. So I
Mhm.
try and provide a good participant experience, but they have to realize that they're coming into the martial arts community. We're going to give them a very good martial arts experience. That was,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Especially,
learner experience.
I agree completely, especially my adult and teenage students come to me and register some form of surprise at some point when they realize they came there thinking they were going to learn about self-defense and developing physical skills and fighting skills, and they register surprise when they realize that it's primarily character development that they're experiencing, and that's a major aha for them, and they find various ways to say it. There's a guy amongst us named Darren Mellerine who is chomping at the bit at this point, has to be, with especially the humor aspect, because I've heard this guy get on a roll with humor, and it's like, okay, my guts hurt from laughing.
Go for it, Darren.
I don't know that I could say it any better than what you and Ken already expressed, in my opinion. I mean, I like what y'all are saying. I agree 100%. And I just think that sometimes, when you're in instruction, the sensei is always the focal point on the mat. When people are hearing what you're saying, they're listening. Sometimes you get to these blank stares, and you're just wondering because they're emotionless. You know, you don't see no expression on their face, or they're just so focused on what you're saying. And so throwing a little something in there that kind of throws a curveball at them, and you can get a reaction, lets you know that they're paying attention and they're absorbing everything that you're saying. And so I find that that is a very useful thing, that and it's very respectful to know that when you do get a reaction out of them, when you completely go off topic, that they're paying attention. So look, what you and Ken are saying, I agree with 100%.
Yeah, I think I
George, I
think
need to interrupt for a second. Talk about communications. You mentioned Oriental instructors a little bit ago. I was at a meeting several years ago. You do not refer to a Asian person as Oriental,
I'm
because
sorry.
Oriental is something that is made, created, a dresser, a bureau, or something.
From
I
the
don't take offense to it because I was called on it when I said somebody's Oriental, and the group just came down on me. So it's just a little communication. One little word can upset a whole group.
Yeah.
And
My apologies for that. There was no malice intended there.
I understand that. I just want to let everybody else know, hey, when you're talking, especially about Asian martial art,
Yes.
careful what you say.
Yes.
But in the same context and teaching, uh, when I was teaching, we had our groups separated in kids class up to the age of 18 and 18 and above. And I had to have an operation, and my son, that was in college at the time, came and filled in for me. And I dropped in on the class one day, and the kids seemed to be enjoying it a lot more because, one, he was an old fart like me, trying to teach them. And number two, he started learning when he was 6 years old, and he was able to communicate with the kids using the kids' language to do the techniques, not the adult version or the Japanese version and all the words. And he said, Dad, when he was a kid, it was too tough to learn a new technique and try to learn the Japanese language at the same time. So he would try and break it down very basic for the kids, and then teach them the Japanese after they've learned the technique a little bit more. But the main thing he did with everybody else, and what everybody else has said, is that if the kids started clowning around, he would clown around with them. And he could do these things because he was still in college. I didn't start jiu-jitsu until I was 40 years old, and I only learned the adult version of how to teach. So I think it's very important to, like everybody else has said, is keep your thoughts and trend and speech at the kids level. And then the same hand, I found one of my adult students kind of objected to having a college kid teaching because he didn't want a young kid teaching him. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, that little kid could beat the crap out of you if he wanted to. So,
I think language is very important. You know, when I taught jujitsu before I taught jujitsu in junior high, I had a very technical explanation of how to get your body into the right place to do a basic koshinagi. And I found that the kids just said, okay, there's Kirby up in front of on the mat out in space somewhere. And so finally I reduced it down to, and some kids actually helped me. And they basically said it came down to, if you have your rear cleavage resting on the middle of their right thigh, you're set and the throw will work. You know, assuming you're low enough and all these other things. But of course, and some kids asked, what's a cleavage? And I had to break down, you know, the middle of your butt. But sometimes you just have to use language that they understand. And the kids got a good laugh out of it. You know, you don't, you know, you don't have to say, well, your right hip needs to be sticking out so that the uke can come over your hip, and you turn to the left, as you throw. This is still an incomplete description if you want to be technical. But once I said, well, you just make, you've come in, you're holding him tight against your body. His thigh is resting right in the middle of your cleavage. You're set. And they got it. And it simplified the explanation tremendously. So it's Nader, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sorry if I'm interrupting you, but
Okay.
I my own nature, I tend to joke around a lot, and I found that most of the time that helps with teaching. But along with that is if you have a sense of excitement, okay, as somebody's doing a technique, you start getting excited and to help the students move faster. It's like, okay, you've done it, the technique once or twice, slow, you got the technique, now pick up the pace, and I use a lot of go, go, go. It's like, all right, ready to do the technique, go, 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 just to give them, show that my attitude is more of an excited attitude to help them get into that sort of pace.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is, sorry to beat a dead horse, but I know what Irving was saying about the word Oriental, and I've heard people get offended about it, but I really don't know why. The only thing Oriental means is Eastern, and if Oriental is offensive, why isn't Occidental offensive? So I think we should be aware that some people are offended by that, but I really don't know why. Because of my ethnicity, I'm categorized as Oriental, and I've never been offended by it.
I think part of it, because I know in the classroom more than in the dojo, I've always been very open with my kids in the classroom, and we've had discussions on different names for different ethnic, cultural, racial groups. And sometimes some kids get upset over some of the terminology, but I think if you can handle it, if you can handle it in a safe environment, kids and people will learn from the experience. And one of the things that was most frustrating, at least to young people, was why can this group refer to themselves in using terminology that would be considered offensive if used by another cultural, racial, or ethnic group, and that creates some of the confusion. Like I'd say, if you're white and you're with black or Afro-American or whatever other name you want to use, you do not say your mama. If you're not Hispanic, you don't say tu madre. Yeah, there are terms, that a group can use, and they don't take insult. I mean, they understand what it means, but it's not appropriate for someone outside that group to use that terminology.
Well, yeah, I don't agree with that.
And that's what creates some of the problems that I think the thing is, as far as being a teacher is concerned, I think of any subject, you have to be aware of different ethnicities, cultures, races, and you have to be sensitive to that. I'm not knocking you. It's just something you have to do to avoid. It's to avoid insulting anyone or any group of people, and that's hard to do. And sometimes we all slip up. And so Irby, I do appreciate your comment, because I had never thought of it that way.
It's okay. I never thought about calling you an Occidental.
That's okay. To use my warped sense of humor, it was accidental that you thought of Occidental. So anyway, so I'm an accidental Occidental. Okay.
Since it's not just cultural groups, I have a friend who's one of the most able-bodied people I know, yet lives life in a wheelchair. And he and his fellow wheelchair inhabitants refer to each other as gimps. But somebody who's not in a wheelchair is not.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm aware of that. Yes. Yes.
So it's not just cultural. Sometimes it's also situational, and it's just something to be socially aware and polite. As far as the Occidental and the Oriental, as grade schoolers, the word Asian was not common. Oriental was, and when you grow up with it at an impressionable age, it's where your mind goes until you hear enough people use the word Asian in place of Oriental,
Yeah.
and then Asian can automatically come out of your mouth.
Okay. So we had a bit of enculturation to,
There you go.
and okay. So okay, where are you here at night? Okay, what do you want to? What's next on? Okay, the next topic we have, and I think we have more than aptly covered condescending language. Here. You do not put people down. Period. You can pull a person aside and say, you know, you made a mistake, or I would appreciate it if you would or would not, but you don't you don't want to embarrass someone in front of other people, because they simply become defensive, and that doesn't help any form of communication. So, okay, next one is bowing in the dojo. And I've seen some dojo from some of the more modern martial arts. There is no bowing. And for some, it's you bow because you were simply told to bow, or that's what you do. And there's the issue of interpretation. Is it respect versus subservience, obedience, or fear? You know, if you don't bow, it's like, and maybe I'll say American cultures, if you don't say hello or other terms as a kid, you know, your parents get upset with you. In less than, you know, maybe correcting you verbally on the side. And the issue is whether bowing versus groveling, which are two different things. And then you have sometimes, and I had to deal with as a school teacher, the issue of religion, people's religious beliefs versus bowing. So how do anyone want to start this off, or?
George, I would like to have a very quick comment on the bowing piece, and also the curriculum. Very brief point, but then some of you gentlemen know that I do a martial arts program at King Haven Treatment Center. It's a treatment center for men in recovery for addictions. So I currently have a full class there at this time. The gentlemen in that class, they want to do a martial art, and they have always wanted to do a martial arts. And some of them say, I've always wanted to do a martial art ever since I was a kid. They love bowing. Like they make a point to bow. They love bowing. They love that aspect of the martial art. And two, the other night when I handed out our curriculum, our full curriculum, just several pages, just the curriculum alone, they grabbed the copies of that as if I was handing out Rolex watches or bundles of cash. And you know something? They are one of the groups that I've enjoyed teaching most in all of my coaching career. Those gentlemen there. So I love, and you know, I have I have a guy there that's on his way. He's already registered as a national registered to taking coaches training, and he's a green belt. But he aspires to be he aspires to be a sensei, and we're cultivating him now as a green belt to be a sensei and to run his own programs one day. So I just wanted to tie that back into the whole conversations here today. And this student of mine, Eric, I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's athletic, he's a professional tradesman, he's smart, he's good at jiu-jitsu, and and he's one of these guys that he loves the structure, he loves the community, he loves the culture, and he loves the etiquette, and he loves the bowing piece. It's structure. So that was my so I tied in a few pieces there, but bowing, I still think I always explain what bowing means. So for me, I explain when we're bowing in this context, this is what it means. And I always point out we're not bowing to false gods. So that's my share on that. Thank you, gentlemen, for listening. That's my share on that part.
I will add something here. Dave and I were talking for a bit yesterday. And one of the things I brought up to Dave was there was one year as a school teacher where the district cut out 1 hour of instruction each week. And the principal, who was probably the best principal I ever worked under, said, but we as teachers had to be there. Involved in some instructional activity according to the school district, although the students weren't. Anyway, don't ask me to explain that. But he asked every teacher to come up with some sort of club or extracurricular program that might keep the kids at school. And he said, you're not teaching a class, you're providing an activity. The only two programs that were successful were Cadet Corps and Jiu-Jitsu. And as Ken just brought up, the reason I firmly believe the reason those two were successful was because they provided the kids with some definitive structure. And that is such a necessity in many people's lives, especially young people. They thrive on it as long as you don't go overboard with it. Because structure will give people a sense of security. They know what's going to happen. They have, they're not here and everything is a big surprise to them. They want a sense of security. And if it's like the sense of humor, if you make them, if they feel good, they'll learn better. And I think that's one of the intent. For me, the bow was simply an indication of respect, not subservience. It wasn't done out of fear. If they didn't bow, I didn't ban them from the mat for 6 years. It was done out of respect and courtesy, and that's all it meant. And for those of you who have students who belong to certain religions where bowing may be seen as a pledge of subservience to something, or there are some religious groups in this country or religions that will not even pledge to the allegiance to the American flag because it's a sign of subservience. And you don't want to do that. I mean, but respect is okay, because we also show respect by shaking hands, sometimes by hugs. I mean, there are different physical ways of showing respect and courtesy. And as long as it's not seen as subservience, we're all okay with it. So,
George.
I mean, some of us have, like I have, you bow before you get on the mat. That's a safety factor. You bow before you work out with someone. That's a safety factor. It also shows, these also show respect, bowing off when you're finished. And I don't go with the bow, from the waist, because I think that's a bad habit to learn on the street. we just bow with our head. You know, it's not necessarily what you do, but how you do it.
Um, Geo- uh, George, I've been doing martial arts for about 40 years, and I don't think I've ever bowed on the street. You know,
Yeah, I will sometimes give a person a nod,
and
and that's an indication, probably more than them that I heard what they said.
Mhm. But you talked about respect, you talked about subservience, but let's not forget humility. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not only to me, it's not only a sign of respect, it's a sign of humility. And how would that benefit me in self-defense? Okay. It creates a sense of humility in the dojo that could be carried out in a person's life. And showing a little humility might be the edge that a person would need to avoid getting into a situation.
Yes.
Okay. So, nowadays, you probably notice it's fashionable. If somebody makes a mistake or does something bad, they say, "Oh, my bad." I really don't like that. Okay. Because it's just stating a fact. It's just stating that, okay, I made a mistake, but it has no expression of apology at all. Okay. And I think if somebody does something bad, they should be sorry about it and they should apologize, and and just acknowledging that you did something wrong isn't enough. You know. So I think bowing. I'm a big proponent of bowing, especially in the school that we're using right now, which is a very traditional judo school.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with bowing in the dojo. I will not, if I know a person's in the martial arts, I will not, bow my head to them before we even do anything else or after we're done. It's just to me, it's just an automatic sign of respect. I think it's also, I mean, I don't separate what are the three things. Humility, integrity, and respect, I think, are the three things I have in Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu. And they're all interrelated with each other. You can't be one without the others.
Mhm.
And you don't, I said, even if you are right in a situation, you don't have to push it. Sometimes the situation just says, okay, I'll keep my mouth shut and we'll all be better off for it. Even though you might be thinking otherwise.
Say, in our culture, it's not unusual. You're walking along, say, a sidewalk or a store aisle. You connect eyes with someone else, and it's not uncommon to just nod your head and smile, which is a very tiny bow, but it's acknowledging them. It's almost a non-contact handshake. It's saying, I accept you. Sometimes they'll do it to me before I do it to them. And it's interesting because it is a form of a bow. It's just pretty subtle. It's just one of these with the head.
Yeah. I love the word acknowledgement, Dave. I love that word, acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ned, if Ned was in Thailand with me or other Eastern Asian countries, you would bow in the streets. And again, when I was a kid and we used to bow to other people, especially older people, it's kind of like a salute. The younger person always bows first, and the senior person will bow back. But one time I did it with just a nod of my head, and my mom slapped me upside the head and said, "Hey, that's disrespectful. You got to bow at the hip." And we went home, and she gave me different lessons on how far you bow for what. If you're really apologetic for something, you bow almost to a 90 degrees, or if you're just saying hi to them as a sign of respect, it's more like a 45-degree, but never with just the head. So, George, you would get me in trouble in Thailand.
It's kind of interesting. When I was in college, we were studying. The class was European governments. And the instructor was known to be incredibly hard on students. I think after the first midterm, half the students failed and dropped out. I mean, he was that tough of a grader. But one of the books he gave us was to read that he expected us to know was body movements from different cultures and different societies and different countries and what they meant. And you had to be, certain countries, if you made certain motions, it was taken as an insult. So I can understand where you're coming from, or if you don't do a motion properly, it means something entirely different. I had I tended to be kind of frank with some of my students at times, particularly in high school. And I had one kid who was ticked off at me, and he gave me the hand on the elbow and the fist, which for those of you who are familiar with what it means. And I saw it, but I said, I'm not going to make an issue out of it. So because I remembered what was in that book he had written, I did the same thing with my little finger, which is a greater insult. And he saw that, so we were even. So then I just smiled at him, and that was the end of of the situation. Sometimes if someone gives you, and I don't know how we're segueing into this topic, if someone gives you an incorrect bit of body language, sometimes you have to just respond in kind, but in a manner that you understand what they're saying and that you can reciprocate, and you're not upset with them because you understand what they're saying. It's a kind of a contradictory concept, but sometimes it can really diffuse a situation. I know from a teacher, when I had to deal with gang members, there were times I would use completely different language, or I would use quote unquote their language and slang at times, just to let them know I understood what they were saying. And once someone else understands what you are saying or what you are meaning, it really helps diffuse the situation. If you want it to do that, that's the key. You can use your body language either, how do you say it, proactively or offensively, either way. And so that's maybe where the bow, issue can be put to it. It's you have to consider what is your intent in having your students bow. Is it to be subservient to you, or is it a sign of mutual respect for each other?
Or a culture you want to maintain.
Or a culture maintain. Because if it's a sign of mutual respect, you're going to get far more cooperation from the student than if it's a sign if they bow out of subservience.
George, I often use the term contract. I love Dave's word earlier about acknowledgement. When we acknowledge people, like when we step onto the mat and we bow, and we acknowledging that I know where I am, I know
Right.
who I'm practicing with, I know what I'm doing, and I know what the expectations are. And I explained to my students, I said, when they begin practicing together, I said, remember, when you bow to each other, I said, that's an acknowledgement and a contract. You're saying, I come into this practice with good intention, with a good heart. I'm here to learn. We're both going to learn. I don't come in here with any emotion where I'm going to try and hurt you or I'm going to try and dominate you. We're here to practice and learn together. And I said, and then I always finish with, remember, if you break your partner, you don't get another one.
Yeah.
But it's a contract. It's an understanding, right?
Yes. Yes.
We're coming into a mutually beneficial connection here where we're going to practice and learn together.
Right.
And I always emphasize that point. And minimize injuries and make sure. And of course, we all would detect somebody who's practicing dangerously or and I had to pick that up sometimes, right? Like, and cool people down. But it works. It's contract.
Right.
No,
It
it's
is.
contract.
It's a contract. It's an understanding. It's an agreement. Uh, I think in my entire teaching career, I've only had one in jiu-jitsu. I've only had one or two students that I've had to remove from the program because they could not get that concept. And when they injured their second student and said, tough, he should have gone faster. You know, it was not that the injury itself took place, but the person's attitude that it wasn't their fault. And I said, I cannot have that in the dojo. You know, it's because you as a sensei are responsible. You as a sensei are responsible for all of your students' safety. Because if students see that a lot of people are being injured, they're not going to be there for long.
Oh,
It's simply out of fear.
yeah. I mean, that's largely why judo and aikido were born out of jujitsu. I love the story from Professor Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo, who went to Tokyo and he went to the local bone setters, right? People who set broken bones and twisted joints. And he inquired, which jujitsu master sends you the least number of clients? So from that, and so the bone setter said, "Oh no, it's Master so and so." Like, he sends me very few people. His jujitsu is very good. So that's where Kano went, is where the least number of injuries occurred. Apparently a true story.
Yeah. We used to run when I was more active, we used to run a camp Budoshin, which was before the Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu summer camps. And that was a one-day event where we would, because the city of Burbank was at the time was really open. We could rent an entire gymnasium for free. Didn't cost us a thing for the day. And we would have senseis come in from different martial arts and they'd bring mats. We'd have 100, 150 participants, and the price was cheap enough. And I lost my point here.
Large, cheap space, and you were able to bring in a lot of
cheap
students.
space, you know, and the city publicized it, we publicized it, and it was extremely successful. And the dojo made a little money off of it. But I forgot the point I was going to make. What were you saying before I?
Injuries, injury-free, low injuries.
Yeah. We have one particular instructor, and I won't say what style of jujitsu. It was almost guaranteed every time he was a great instructor. But students who weren't used to that route of jujitsu, he moved too fast for some of them, and we would usually have at least one or two wrist injuries from this, and that would usually be the only injuries out of, you know, we'd have karate, we'd have aikido, we'd have judo, we'd have Krav Maga. You know, we just opened it up to all different martial arts to teach, and he was the only person who would have injuries. And
Interesting.
eventually, you know, word got out, and he ended up with very few participants, in spite of him being, you know, phenomenally knowledgeable, phenomenally good instructor. But I guess he just, for whatever reason, I mean, I would always stress my students, particularly at lower ranks, do the technique slowly. You're trying to learn to do the technique correctly, get the proper feel of the technique. And as you progress in rank and as you become more knowledgeable, you will naturally speed up. And your uke, who is probably going to be about the same rank as you are, is familiar enough with the technique that he knows when he needs to cooperate with you for his own safety. And it's a process. And for some reason, we're talking about injuries to brown belts, to black belts, because I guess they were expecting a certain amount of patience that wasn't there. And it's not to say the techniques were wrong, but probably, speed at which they were being executed. And he wasn't concerned about that. But on the street, you're going to really go really fast anyway. And you probably have no idea what you've done anyway until you can think about it later on. I think we're going to stop at this point because we've gone past 9:30. And like I said, next time is going to be our 100th. So if you know someone who you think would really benefit, maybe they're a sensei of another martial art or jiu-jitsu or your black belt co-instructors, invite them to participate. I don't know what we'll do if we have 20 or 30 people. Or if you can think of which of the remaining topics we have on here, my list has 17 topics, and we've gone through 4 of them. We're stopping at dojo uniform. I don't know if dojo uniform is going to be a really exciting topic for the 100th discussion, but if there's some topics in here that you think should come first, please let me know. Or if you come up with another topic that you think really would get some people to speak out. Ideally, I'd like to see everybody chomping at the bit to speak. And sometimes I have to look at people's facial expressions to see if they're chomping at the bit. Because we all want to look very composed and professional. But anyway, so with that in mind, I want to thank all of you who are here today. And I think we surprisingly covered 4 topics. And I think even if the next time we only cover 2 topics, that's okay too, or 1 or 2. It's I think what continually impresses me is the quality of what we do, not the quantity. So that's what's important. So anyway, anyone have any closing thoughts before we?
Sensei, I'll send you a text or an email in a little bit. One potential topic for our 100th is one of my favorites. I'm not going to punch you in the knees, so why would I kick you in the head?
There's one. Thanks. And and on the humor topic today.
Punching
Seriously,
punching the knees.
I'm sorry, what?
Punching the knees?
I'm not going to punch you in the knees, so why would I kick you in the head? Seriously, balancing, attacking upper and lower in the same conflict, so that you're not focused primarily on one or the other. It's a really good balance to strike, no pun intended.
Dave is good at puns.
To balance your leg kicks of an opponent with a diagonal slides, so that as you strike, they don't even face you. You've got them guessing, and you're going high when they think you're going low, and low when you think you're going high. It's a great topic, and it opens up a lot of interesting ideas from a lot of people.
Yeah, okay, get it to me. We'll add it on.
Okay.
And
or not.
Okay. Anyway,
Thanks, everybody.
Well, you have a good weekend. It's going to be down into the 90s today here, and next week we're back up into the hundreds. This is Southern California, and if you don't like the weather, wait till tomorrow. It'll change. It's not like back east or the central U.S. where they've been dealing with horrible weather for the past few weeks. Anyway, but at least it's consistent. Anyway, so take care, and I'll try and have this out and available in a few days. Like I said before, all of you should be getting an AI summary of the meeting. directly sent to you courtesy of Zoom. So you might want to look for it in your email and or some other means. And if you don't, let me know and I'll get it to you because I know I'll be getting a copy anyway. Okay, so take care. Don't do anything dangerous. Be kind to your students, and hopefully the world will continue to turn.
Thank
Without-
you, everybody. Thanks a
without-
lot.
With
I
all-
always learn something new. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.